It is 6:33 p.m. on Thursday, February 24th, 2022, and I call to order this general meeting of the Intermediate District 287 School Board. We are going to start this evening, as we always do, with a reading of our mission, which this evening is going to be done by Sam Sant.
The mission of Intermediate District 287 is to be the premier provider of innovative, specialized services to ensure that each member district can meet the unique learning needs of its students.
Thank you. And will you also start us with the introductions?
Sam Sant, Robbinsdale.
Heidi Marty, West Tonka.
Michelle Combs, Orono.
Hi, I'm Regina Neville, Edina.
I'm Crystal Brackey from Richfield Public Schools.
Ruthie Dallas from Brooklyn Center Community Schools.
Hi, Sarah Johansson, Wayzata Public Schools. Ann Casey, proudly representing St. Louis Park, especially proud this week to represent St. Louis Park.
And I believe board member Jackie Mosqueda Jones will be joining us. She just might be a little bit late this evening. So also want to welcome the members of our district community who are with us here in the boardroom and online. Thank you so much for spending your time with us this evening, including our guest who is going to be with us for a big part of our agenda. So we are excited to have you and to meet you and get to know you better in just a little bit here. Next, we move to approval of tonight's agenda. Unless there is a modification that anybody would like to make, is there a motion to approve the agenda as presented?
Second.
A motion by Michelle Coons and a second by Heidi Marty. Any discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The chair votes aye and the agenda is approved. Next on the agenda is open forum for community comments. I do not believe that anybody has asked to address the board this evening. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay, thank you. So we will move to approval of the consent agenda, which contains routine business items. Unless there's an item that somebody would like removed for individual consideration, we could entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion by Regina Neville and a second by Sarah Johansson. Any discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The chair votes aye and the consent agenda is approved. We move next into share the success and recognitions, where we have two items on the agenda this evening, and I will turn things over to our superintendent.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Good evening, board members. Really happy tonight to celebrate School Board Recognition Week. I think we could all agree this year more than ever, Minnesota school boards and school boards perhaps across the nation have really been under attack in some cases and really left to uphold the role of school board members in an environment that's been very, very challenging. So I think it's especially important this year to recognize you on the District 287 School Board who have yet a complication in that role, in that you're a part of an intermediate district. Nonetheless, I'd like to read the resolution that recognizes school board members for their work and know that it's one that I read with a lot of gratitude. Whereas District 287 recognizes the importance of public education in our community, and whereas Intermediate District 287 appreciates the vital role played by those individuals who, as local school board members, establish policies to ensure an effective school system, and whereas school board members serve as a voice that enables our community to preserve local management and control of our public schools, and whereas school board members are charged with representing our local education interests to state and federal governments and ensuring compliance with state and federal laws, and whereas school board members selflessly devote their knowledge, time, and talents as advocates for our school children. Whereas local school board members are strong advocates for public education and responsible for communicating the needs of the school district to the public and the public's expectation to the district. Now, here be it resolved that Intermediate District 287 recognizes and salutes the members of Intermediate District 287 School Board by proclaiming February 21st through the 25th, 2022 as School Board Recognition Week. Please know that we are grateful for your work. Many of you are on 2 school boards, and we know how much time and energy that takes. But just in general, I don't think a week goes by that I don't comment to one group or another about what an excellent group of school board members I've had the privilege of working with always. And in this particular year where we've had so many challenges, I'm just so grateful to have you surrounding our families and students and staff by the work that you do in District 287. So thank you very much. And we have a couple things that hopefully are just little tokens of our appreciation here tonight. So thank you very much. And we have your very own certificate of appreciation. So
Thank you.
Thank
Yeah.
you.
Thank you.
let's give them a round of applause.
Thank you. Sandy and I agreed that that would be an honorary resolution because
Right.
it might be a little bit awkward for us to vote on a resolution appreciating ourselves. So thank you for the honorary resolution and for all of the kind words. We appreciate all of you more than we could ever put into words. Every week is appreciation week for you all.
And
All right,
I'll do the second one.
please.
And I'd like to ask Dr. Elizabeth Lodge Rogers to acknowledge and introduce our Above and Beyond Award winner for this particular board meeting. And I'll turn it over to Elizabeth.
Thank you, Superintendent Lewandowski, and members of the board. I'm really pleased to announce our Above and Beyond Award recipient for representing our West education programs at Hennepin Tech College, Eden Prairie, is Rachel McDee. Rachel is an administrative assistant for our programs that are operated at Hennepin Tech College. She is amazing, and I'll just, I know that Alexia Poppy Finley, her principal, will talk a little bit further, but I just want to say Rachel is amazing. She is a professional, and she is focused on relentless advocacy for our students and families and staff. She tracks down things that need to be fixed, repaired, or done at Hennepin Tech College and make sure our partners work with us to get those things done. And she's so concerned and supportive of staff to the point where she put together, assured that there was a wellness place for staff to go and relax and recover, and participates and leads the way in activities to promote community and fun. I hear that she's very competitive. And to that end, she makes sure that things are run to a T there in terms of assuring enrollments are smooth, the data are correct, the students' needs and staff needs are met. She follows our protocols, and she just holds herself to the highest standard. And it is my privilege to have been able to go out and in person deliver the award to her. And now, Alexia, I know you have a few things to say. Congratulations, Rachel.
I think you said a lot of it, Elizabeth, but yes, good evening, board. Thanks, Dr. Rogers, for the introduction. I am lucky to sit here and get to introduce, co-introduce Rachel and celebrate all the work that she's done with Pathways and Beyond. I think that a persister is a really good descriptor of Rachel. She persists in whatever she's doing. It can be pretty hard when you're asking people to turn in receipts and forms on time and to be you're not going over your budget and not always the person people love to hear from, but it's necessary work, and I'm really glad that I can support her in that work and that she's a constant customer service driven person that does love to plan parties and fun. Not my skill set, so I know who to go to when we need to have fun. So thank you. Rachel. Congratulations on this award, and you're very well, or you deserve this very much for Above and Beyond at 287.
Thank you. Rachel, is there anything that you would like to say? You don't have to if you don't want to.
Pressure's on now. Okay, well, I really appreciate this. I was very surprised. And I came to 287 after my mom retired from the district, had told me how great this district was, how much it did appreciate its employees, and also supported, a healthy work-life balance. So when I came to a time in my life I needed to make a change, I was lucky enough to be able to get this position at 287. And yeah, I appreciate it. Thank you. Thank you for recognizing me.
Thank you, Rachel. I have visited the Hennepin Tech programs before the pandemic, and I can only imagine how complex your role is. Being located within a college and trying to just manage all of the moving pieces and moving parts and the humans and the system. So I really admire you and appreciate you for doing that, and for doing that with a sense of fun. helps a lot too. Any additional comments or questions? All right, let's just do one more round of applause. Congratulations, Rachel. Thank you for being with us tonight. And now we turn to our superintendent's report.
Thank you. Well, board members, I think it strikes me that, well, a month ago, I was aware of an agency that is entitled the School Safety Center for the state of Minnesota. But I could not have predicted how in the course of the last month, I would get to meet and work with Randy Johnson, who's here with us tonight. Randy is the director of the Minnesota School Safety Center. And in a situation like a school shooting, you need somebody to come in that is experienced and calm and willing to step into the middle of a very important and sometimes chaotic situation. And Randy has done just that. He picks up the phone, he's checks in, and we are excited that he and his agency will be working with us over the next weeks to unfold both an advisory team as well as look at next steps in our district's trajectory in terms of school safety. Ben McGrath is here tonight as well, and may help answer questions or chime in. Ben is leading our internal efforts with an advisory committee and our work to figure out a plan that gets us to the safest school environment that we can possibly do. And so both Ben and I will be working closely with Randy and his agency in the coming weeks. When I invited him here following a meeting at SEC with several representatives and then with our school staff, it became clear that it would be also helpful to have Randy come to a school board meeting, and he quickly agreed. And so, Randy, welcome to District 287. And I'd invite you to perhaps maybe use the mic, the podium. It might be easier for everybody to hear. And introduce yourself and give us a background that would be helpful.
Should I take this off?
Up to
Yeah,
you.
that's fine.
At least I have a face. There is something behind these masks. Isn't that something? Thank you. My name is Randy Johnson, and I am the director of the Minnesota School Safety Center with the Minnesota Department of Public Safety. So we're embedded in one of the agencies beneath the big umbrella of Department of Public Safety, which includes State Patrol, State Fire Marshal's Division, Minnesota Bureau of Criminal Apprehension, Office of Pipeline Safety, things that we just don't even think about, but get taken care of behind the scenes throughout the state of Minnesota. One of the things that I would like to at least do is spend a little bit of time explaining, number one, who we are, number two, what we aren't, okay? Because that's very important to have that clearly in our minds. We'll talk about the different relationships that we have throughout the state of Minnesota, and then just kind of have some comments about what we've been able to do as far as some of our very very early work in this marathon that we're in. It's not a sprint that any of us are in when we're trying to recover from a tragic loss such as this. First off, I would like to say how sorry we are that we are even here to have this conversation. What a tragic loss of life. I think it's a loss of innocence in many ways too. Superintendent, I thank you so much for your work that you've been doing. It's very easy to be a leader when things are going well. It's really tough to be a leader when things are difficult. And each one of you that I'm looking at here are leaders within your own school districts and the work that you do bring to school safety. I'll tell you a little bit about the Minnesota School Safety Center. Minnesota School Safety Center is embedded in Homeland Security and Emergency Management, which is one of these other groups that we really don't see, but we hear about every once in a while. Where did you hear about us most recently during this COVID mess that we've been in? Minnesota State Emergency Operations Center.
Supporting COVID testing.
Supporting all the COVID, supporting Department of Ed, supporting Department of Health, Governor's Office, all of those folks. We spent 427 days in the State Emergency Operations Center in support of COVID response, from the very beginning days of the chaotic, crazy, all the way to the end now where we are in this kind of stasis period. For 400 and whatever days, I was the state incident manager for COVID response. Really? Seriously? We all get challenged, don't we, when things get a little bit crazy. But that gives you an idea of what we do outside of the school safety side. I've been with the Minnesota School Safety Center now for 8 years. We are funded through general funds, which is somewhat unique within Homeland Security and Emergency Management, which is usually grant funded through federal funds such as FEMA and those types of things. The other areas that we take care of is radiological response. We have 2 nuclear power plants within the state of Minnesota. So we are in charge of all the exercising training for local and public safety agencies throughout Minnesota for those types of events. But to lean back into the School Safety Center, we're in charge of all hazard safety planning, support, and resources for schools within the state. That's pre-K through 12. We don't go into higher ed necessarily, although we do provide them with some information. Public charter, private, and tribal schools. There's how many schools in the state of Minnesota? There's like 365 public school districts, correct? And then you start looking at all the little nursery schools and private schools and tribal schools throughout the state. That's a lot of schools. I was able to add 2 people to our team, so we're up to a team of total of 5 over this past year. And we get to travel throughout the state of Minnesota and assist them with a variety of things in all hazards planning, whether it's severe weather, whether it ends up being a traumatic or a violent event. We kind of consider ourselves that bridge between public safety, the community wraparound resources, and the schools themselves. Because a lot of times when we get places throughout the state, they have not had a lot of these conversations and these plannings that they need to do. But we also get drawn into some other things. A couple of years ago, Superintendent, we were with you talking about funding, especially for the intermediate districts, which is so critical. My background is in law enforcement. I spent 32 years in law enforcement. I was 25 years in the city of Roseville, and then I left as captain, second in command with White Bear Lake Police Department. And being there during that time, I got to spend quite a bit of time working with the 916 intermediate district, just because they were embedded within our buildings. Our students from our communities that I was working with were in those schools. So I have a really strong sense and a strong attraction to the special work that is done with the intermediate districts, which is challenging. working with these school districts, we're able to work with, many of the successes that they have. And again, talking about the challenges that we have. And one thing that I tell people that we're involved with when we begin our conversation with school safety is always remember that not all schools are the same. That's pretty obvious, isn't it? We usually tell people, you've seen one school, you've seen one school. Because there is such a difference, whether it's the community support, the relationships that are in place in the community, wraparound services that are available, public safety partnerships, brick and mortar, student population, what is the demographics of the communities? What is the economic issues that communities are dealing with? Each one is different. One of the things that we do when we get out into greater Minnesota, especially, is when we drive into a community that we're going to be working with, we always pay attention to that green sign, at the city limits that has the population on there. And when we sit down with the public safety folks and the school folks, as we're about to do whatever work it is that we're going to be attempting to help them with, is we say, what is the population of your school on any given day? And what we find is that that number is actually larger than the number that's on the city limit sign. Isn't that interesting? So when we're thinking about the importance and the place within the community that the schools hold, we know what that is. We work with the State Fire Marshal's office. State Fire Marshal's office is a regulatory agency, right? We are not. One of the best things that the legislature did for us, or when they set us up, is making us non-regulatory. Now, there's a couple of things that go along with that. If we were regulatory, it could simplify my life an awful lot. I can go into my cop mode and say, do this, and do this, and do this, and do this, and it's going to be done by such and such a date, right? I can't do that. I don't do that. That's part of my explanation of what we aren't. We are not a regulatory agency. So we don't come in and say, this is how you're going to fix it. Because I don't know. I don't know if that's necessarily going to be right for this school community within this larger community that it's embedded. So that has been one of our great gifts that we were given. So when we work with schools, we usually go in and spend an awful lot of time listening on the front end, just to get a sense of who you are, what are the challenges that you are speaking to, what are some of the things that have happened recently, what have been some of the long-range things that you are working towards. And we're able to say, it's okay if you show me where that wart kind of is with the, the funny hairs that we just can't really seem to control, because that's a conversation between us, and we can take care of those conversations in private and work, through the different parts and pieces that we need to get to some sort of a solution that is going to work for you. Because the reality is, like when I was working with folks in domestic abuse situations, when I was in law enforcement, I would be dealing with a woman or a child or a man or whatever that was involved in one of those situations. And I'd say, we have all these resources for you. We have this, we have this, we have this, we have this, we have this. Come along, let's do it. And many times the response I would get from the person who was victimized was, no, you just don't understand. You don't understand. You get back in your car and you drive away to your next call for service. Because guess what? I have to live here. And to me, that was an aha statement that's just stuck with me throughout the remainder of my 32 years in law enforcement, and then moving forward into the school safety center. We have to meet people where they are and help work with them where they're at, and try to move them hopefully to a better place, a safer place, and a better place for all involved. As I said, my team members, there's 4 other persons on the team, and they also specialize in certain things. I have one person who is a former fire chief who works with our facility assessments and with the State Fire Marshal's office. So that is the lens that she looks through when we're working on things. I have another former law enforcement officer who works with the school resource officer group predominantly. She was a school resource officer at Henry Sibley High School for many, many years, and is in charge of training both the basic school and the intermediate and ongoing advanced SRO strategies throughout the state of Minnesota. I have a person on board who is, literally on board. His background is in safety and security technologies. He came to us from critical infrastructure work with the United States Coast Guard. And then I also have a young lady who is the most recent person who was added, and she's a communications specialist. And she came to us not from the public safety side, but from the communications side, where she worked with tobacco cessation programs throughout the center part of the state of Minnesota, working directly with the schools and all the communication parts and pieces and linking the community with the schools and the efforts of tobacco cessation. So that kind of gives you an idea of what our group is. We are based out of downtown St. Paul in town center, so in town square, so we're very close as far as response. We do not respond as first responders, but we are a critical provider of resources for each and every one of you. And when I listen to some of the different districts that were involved here, we've been working with St. Louis Park Schools and probably several of your school districts that are members of the intermediate group. I did not put together necessarily a large presentation of any type. I didn't play the death by PowerPoint piece, but I thought that this would be mainly a chance to have a conversation as to what are the concerns on your minds? What are the things that keep you awake at night? What are the things that you have questions about that we can provide as far as resources to you? We had a wonderful experience of being able to sit down initially after the event. I think it was the day after the event, we made a phone call just to check in and see if there was anything that we could do to provide any support or services for the intermediate school district. And our offer was taken up, which was a very, very positive thing. We were able to meet at the school, have a rather brief walkabout the facility just to get a sense of what is going on, what is the relationships that are going on within the building, brick and mortar, what does this look like? What are some of the safety and security parts and pieces and strategies that are already in place? What are some of the things that we just noticed about that school community within that particular building? Following that, following the next week, we were able to actually meet with staff members in a forum very similar to this in the gymnasium. And I don't know, how many people do you think that we had at that? It's about 150 staff members, which was really, really good for them to be able to ask some questions. And as you can imagine, emotions were high. They still are. This is still raw. This is still really, really fresh in all of our minds as we're trying to process not only supporting staff and students and the families as we work through this, but then taking a look at what are some of the strategies that we can assist all of you with in hopefully making sense of how we can come together and have the best outcomes as far as strategies moving forward from this point. Any questions from any of you right now? Is there anything that's right at the tip of your tongue?
Or Sandy, anything that you would want to add at this point? Is there anything that you would want to add at this point?
No, I don't think at this point. I think you're still going to give some of your first reactions, and I think that's a good next step.
Yeah. One of the things that we had asked when we did make our first walkabout was the question of, could we see things on game day? And what I mean by seeing things on game day, we would really like to be within the building and just see what happens during a part of the building, because we can sit in a room like this and just talk and talk and talk, but we're really not getting a sense of what is going on within the building on just any given school day. So we were able to spend about an hour sitting and talking about different things that were on people's minds as far as safety and security. And then we did a walkabout. And what was kind of interesting is we broke into two different groups. So we had representatives of administration. We also had teachers. We had some union representation as far as staff members with us. and then some of our team members. And it just gave a chance for us to have a looky-loo about the building, but also spending more time just listening to what was on the hearts and minds of the persons that were actually within the building and could give us really some strong insights as to what was going on. The number one thing we wanted to do was to just get a sense of what does the culture of the building feel like? Now, it's something that you just don't put necessarily a numeric type of number on, but you know when things are good, and you know when things are going a little bit sideways, right? I remember one of the Supreme Court justices, they were talking about, they were working on a case involving pornography. Pornography. And somebody asked the judge, could you define what pornography is if we're going to have some kind of a legal standard? And the judge said, I really can't give you a clear definition, but I know it when I see it. That's the same type of thing that we talk about when we're talking about the culture within a school building. You can tell when things are a little bit off bubble, right? Immediately when you go in, just the way that the interactions and the relationships between staff members, teachers, administrators, and the students, and all of the other people that are involved in wraparound services become involved. What we noticed right at the very beginning is people just walking in, students walking in at the very beginning of day. That's one of the things that we look at very first. And just that welcoming sense within the building was just palpable, truly palpable. So it's one of the first things we look at is what are the strengths? And right from minute one, when these students do enter the building, how are they received? How are they welcomed by staff members? You had a really nice central area where students and staff met at the very beginning of the day when they're dropped out from the various buses and the different transportation conveyances that the kids come from this wide area. It's an amazing thing to see. I don't know how it gets orchestrated. It's almost to the minute because as each student would walk in and check in at the front door, there would be that staff member or two that would immediately greet the student. Welcome, how's your day going? Come on in, let's go. And it was just very good to see the way that is done. A lot of schools, we don't see that. There may be a principal or a teacher or somebody out greeting, but very difficult sorting and actually coming to each student and calling them by name. That's a big deal. That's a really big deal. So that check-in was really good to see. As the day progressed, we could see once the initial flow of students in at beginning of day, we could see how the security group within the school was working very well in coordinating people coming in, vetting them in, what is your reason for being here, and getting them to the correct location for the correct reasons. So your front entrance was really good, and I really tip my hat to the way that students and staff interact at the very beginning of day. As we walked around the building, one of the other things that we saw that was a real strong positive was the security and the segmenting of the building as far as access to rooms, etc. Access cards to get almost everywhere within the building. That again was a real positive thing that we noticed, and most schools do not have that throughout the state of Minnesota. We really enjoyed seeing that piece. You have camera systems within the building, which are very positive reinforcement where you're able to actually monitor and see where students and staff members are during the day. As students were walking throughout the building, they were almost always accompanied by a staff member, which was another really high point for us. We realized that this particular school and intermediate schools do have a very high ratio of staff and teachers and wraparound service providers to students, almost a 1-to-1 in this particular building, which is very significant. And I think that adds to that ongoing positive relationship. When we were talking to the teachers that were, on our walkabout with us, you could tell that there is an intense positive relationship between the students, the staff member and teachers, and also the families of the students. That's not something that we see every place. Some of the schools that we go to, some of these very, very large schools, it almost seems as though it's half of a semester or a quarter before a teacher may necessarily even know the names of all the 40 kids that are in a classroom. So that is, again, a very positive thing here. Your technologies are very strong. You made an adaptation immediately following the tragic event as far as the entry of students and making sure that bags were continually checked, but then also the wanding process just as a secondary piece. The one thing that we talk about with people is very much the concept that you can't buy your way to safety. And I think that has to be, agreed by everybody. You cannot buy your way to safety 100%. And that's whether it's to a violent event, a targeted event, or whether it's even school bus crashes. You can't buy your way to safety because there is risk involved anytime that you draw people into a transportation issue, anytime you draw large numbers of people within a building. People want to have the quick fix. You have an incident that occurs such as this, and everybody wants to just, let's go, 1, 2, 3, boom, get the checkbook out. Ben, get the checkbook out. Is that how we do this? Yeah, not necessarily so, and we caution people from thinking that way. And the big caution that we have is an over-reliance on technologies that you will make an assumption that the technology will save us. No, that's not true. That's an adjunct, that's an add-on, that's another layer and piece that we would suggest doing. Let's take a look at technologies, but ones that fit within the culture and the context of what we're talking about. When we're dealing with school safety, we talk about it as being, let's have an illustration. If you had a 4x4 block of Swiss cheese, big chunk, you went over to Lund's Byerly's or something and you picked up this beautiful chunk of cheese, but if you would kind of hold it up to the light like this, you can see holes that go right through it every once in a while. Remember how that works? Those are the gaps that we're trying to fill in security and safety strategies, especially within schools. If you took that block of cheese and sliced it into thin slices, and then started overlaying the slices like a deck of cards that you could fan out, and then hold it up, chances are you're probably not going to have those holes, correct? Because those different interlocking, interlaying layers of the cheese is what we're talking about when we're talking about effective school safety and security strategies. And you already have those parts and pieces in place that we saw to a great degree as we did that very brief walkabout in the school. You had the front entrance, you had school staff meeting and greeting students in a positive way at the very beginning of their day. You had school staff escorting and accompanying students throughout the building. You have the electronic fobs to provide opportunities to segment your building. You have communication pieces in place through PAs, et cetera. You have just a wide variety of things already in place. So you have very strong strategies to build from. One of the things that I can pretty comfortably say all schools struggle with is communication strategies. And the communication strategies both internally within the building to be able to provide just-in-time correct information rather than the social media type of information that is not necessarily something that we can count on as absolute fact and truth. Communication within the building, that's with staff members, that is with administration, that's with moving beyond the single school building to the other buildings within the district. is really important. And that's one area that we would have to maybe take a look at a little bit more with different ways that we are communicating now. You know, it used to be that you just had the PA, you know, and you'd make the announcement, you know, everyone go to, you know, blah, 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 or, you know, Billy Smith come down and pick up your clarinet type of a thing. That isn't necessarily going to provide the information that staff members need to have within the building in the case of an emergency. That's whether it's a weather emergency, a violent event, or whatever. Chance of a violent event is very small. We all realize that. But if it happens to you, it's a mule kick to the head, right? It's kind of like when you go and talk to the doctor and they say, well, there's a 2% chance that, you know, this disease could really cause issues. Well, somebody is that percent, right? There's a name attached to that. So we are aware that that's the way that this thing works, but communication strategies are very important, not only internally, but then how are we going to be communicating out to parents and family members should something be occurring within the building. One thing that we did see when this incident did occur is we didn't have any other information other than what most people within our larger community had, and that is clicking onto the local television or radio stations. And I have to say that your outward communication and the way that the event was handled was outstanding from the seat that we were looking at. Just the information that was provided, you know, as we know, this ends up being a criminal investigation, so we're very limited as to the information shared, not only with the public, but also, unfortunately, in real time to staff members. Very difficult communication. You did a very, very good job with that. Your external communication was really, really good. Even in the hard time, superintendent, to stand up in front of those microphones with the public safety partners is not a place anyone wants to stand. So that was very, very well done. But we'll help work with you on some of the other communication strategies. How do we maybe amp up our communication abilities within the building? Many times we're going to app-based communications within the school building to provide real just-in-time information to staff members, drive them through some of the technology type of pieces that we can provide, information that isn't necessarily shared with the public, but internally necessary to incorporate additional safety pieces. I've been kind of talking around and around and around. Would it be a good time to ask if anyone has any questions for us right now? Again, we're still early in the process of working with you here at the school district on longer term strategies. As we said, this is not going to be a sprint by any means. And I think what's going to happen though is information and processes and strategies that we're able to develop here with our District 287 are also things that are going to be able to be pushed out to your home districts also. And we're more than willing to come and work with any of your districts too, outside of this one. Questions, thoughts? Yes.
I was wondering, do you do like fire drills and disaster drills in the workplace? Do you provide those kind of activities to schools?
Yes. Yes, that's part of that
How often?
overall all hazards planning and training that we do. One thing that I did not address is we do an awful lot of training of staff members too, staff and public safety partners. Just to give you an example, over the past year, especially one of the more popular trainings that we're giving is de-escalation strategies for school bus drivers.
Mm-hmm.
Support staff members, driving it right down to the line people that are having the actual face-to-face with our families, with our communities, and it's really, really been positively accepted throughout the state. It's one thing that we hadn't done before is incorporating some of these auxiliary pieces and parts within the district that it's so important. First face you see, last face you see at the end of the day. Yeah. And we work with all of the things such as severe weather drills, sheltering in place, Again, de-escalation strategies has been one of our large ones. We work with schools on lockdown, lockout, type of drills and that type of thing. And what we try to do is expand their vision just a little bit, because usually when you hear, okay, we're going to be doing a lockdown drill, and it's the same old stuff that we do all the time. Okay, lock the door, have the kids go in a corner, everybody squat down, be quiet, that type of thing. We look at it at a much broader sense, that we try to open up the possibilities to our education partners. There's nothing that says your lockdown drill couldn't involve a communication drill between staff members. It don't even have to include students at all.
Mhm.
It could be a communication drill. What information are we going to pass on to parents and family members should there be a need to go into a lockdown? Lockdown or a lockout could be used for a variety of things that we were concerned about. We were working with one of the tribes. You know what they did a lockout and a lockdown drill for? They had a bear come into the school. They had tribal dogs wandering around the parking lot, and they had to do a lockout drill to get the kids back inside the building. There are things that we don't think about because we want to immediately go to a worst case scenario, but that isn't necessarily so. And some of the skills that we teach our students and staff in a lockdown or a lockout could be applied to a variety of different situations that could potentially occur if we kind of open up our minds to possibilities and not think of it as just being, something that is, a horrendous type of an incident. Other thoughts?
Thank you.
You're very welcome.
Were you going to say something, Sandy?
Nope.
No, okay. Sarah, go ahead.
Yeah, so I have a question that maybe this is moving us ahead a little bit, but clearly going into SEC after it and doing that assessment is really super important. But then I think about our other buildings, right? And our other places and what is our, and then that reality of if it can, maybe a fear of it can happen there, it can happen here, but the way that building's set up is very different than this building. What is our work with you, or what is our talk about work with you, not only for South, but across 287?
Yeah, I think a great question, and one that our staff asked and we are asking ourselves as well. I think in the most general sense, what we learn at SEC will have applicability to our other buildings. Although each of our buildings are different architecturally, and in some ways different programs and student profiles that use those buildings. But having come this far, I think we'll have some lessons learned or recognitions that we're doing some things very well that will carry over throughout the district. So we expect that. But I also say we're also very early in the process. I think we've kept the board and our other stakeholders updated on what's happened so far. And we'll continue to do that, those learnings that come with that kind of process. Ben, do you want to add anything to that?
Sure, just briefly. We've established an 11-person district-wide safety team as part of the response. That's a diverse team. Thankful for Randy to be a part of that team as well. Our first meeting is next Tuesday. It's a pretty diverse team, both by race, by role, and by site. So our goal there is just what Sandy said, is that we have an emphasis with our staff on that team for responding to the safety questions and concerns at South Education Center. But we intend to apply those learnings and practices across the district. So we've got that team established. We've got a meeting time and date, and we're ready to get going.
Thank you.
One of the things I've really appreciated about 287 is I find this district to be really intentional and proactive about what we do, the culture that we build in each of our sites. And in terms of removing the metal detectors, that step was taken. I went back and reviewed all the reasons we did it, and they still hold. And I really appreciate that. I value that. So my question for this is now, we've had a tragedy occur. So understandably, everyone is rattled, emotions are high. In your experience, what helps to reassure safety when technology, I appreciate what you're saying, that technology isn't necessarily going to solve the problem, and it might provide a false sense of security. So if technology might not be the answer, which I completely appreciate and endorse, what does help our staff and our students to feel safe and to be safer?
That's the most difficult part, isn't it? That is the most difficult part. You know, technologies and equipment and pieces and parts, that's the easy part. It's healing of the hearts and souls that is the difficult part. And especially when you're dealing with, you know, such a diverse group of students and a diverse group of staff members where everyone is processing in different ways. People are trying to understand what could have been done differently. Could I have done something differently? And how about this one? This is the hard one. Is anyone carrying some guilt? Is anyone carrying some guilt? I could have, we should have, I could have, we possibly, you know, it's the processing piece that is going to be probably the most protracted part that we are dealing with. And I think what I found again and again, what people need more than anything is to be heard. And they need to, you know, process out loud and, you know, really let their hearts tell the story that is within them, because everyone experienced this incident differently. There are some that were hands-on witnesses, really, right there. You had heroic staff members trying to save lives. You had other people, what did they know about it? What I saw on TV, I was on the other end of the building. I wasn't even on campus that day. They're going to be processing things in a completely different manner. So I think part of what we hope to do is to be there in that listening piece. It's kind of a holy space that people are at. It's a sacred space where people are able to share what their own reactions are, and then help process of walking through different strategies and say, yes, 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 and sometimes yes, but. The hard part is when we get to the part where decisions have to be made, because a lot of times it's yes, many times it's no, but the worst part is the in-between. It's the wait. And we're in the wait right now, aren't we? As we're processing, as we're talking, and it's going to take a bit of time to do so. Immediate steps for immediate safety and security considerations were taking place. They did take place immediately, and they are still in place during this time of waiting. But waiting is hard. Waiting is hard. During this waiting time, what we really hope to do is be able to listen to what people are saying, listen to their thoughts, and what their concerns are, and to be open to ideas, because sometimes it's easy for me to come in and say, well, let's just throw those metal detectors back in. Boom, done, right? That's not necessarily the answer, because I could come in blind to many things that I'm not aware of as far as the conversations, the processes, and the way the decisions were made, because for this community, it may not be the best to have those devices within the building. There are other strategies that would be much more effective, lots more efficient, and a lot more in blending with the culture of what we are trying to have here in this school district. So it's the listening piece in the waiting. And I think when I look at all of your faces, half of your faces, that's going to be your role too. Big time. Big time to be listening to your communities, listening to your staff members, listening to your families, and probably a group that we kind of tend to overlook. How about the students? Are we listening to them? And I think that's a very, very key piece that we have talked about already, as far as making sure that all the voices are heard at the table. Everyone is welcome at that table to speak, even though sometimes it's really hard to hear it. Isn't it? It's really hard to hear it. We need to open ourselves up to the possibilities of being able to better understand and not be blind to things that I may already prejudge by walking in, to this particular situation. So I don't know, it's kind of a roundabout, it's kind of a loosey-goosey
I
thing.
does not know. I really appreciate the language that you use, the way you shaped this. It was so well said. I jotted down a few things, and it brings to mind a follow-up question. I appreciate your presentation. I know you're not finished. You have more to cover. I appreciate your presence, that you are very present here. And given the type of work that you have been engaged in throughout your career in one format or another, how do you build capacity for the listening? It is such a beautiful answer to create that holy space. How do you build the capacity, or another way I've heard it phrased with different groups is to empty your cup before you can be present. You have to create your own space. You have to empty your cup to be ready. Any guidance for us as a school board to be better listeners?
Here's my reach back for me personally. I have to reach back to the core values of what I believe I am, what I hope to be in all that I do. And I love the way that you were saying, it's emptying the cup, because our cups are overflowing with everything that happens, within our everyday lives, and all of the strange crazy that we're involved with every single day. That being present, I think, is the most important. And it's not just physically being present. Can I share something with you that I'm an Episcopal priest.
Cool.
When I was going to seminary, we could take all of our pastoral care studies and work that we would do in hospital, in hospice, in very difficult situations that you're asked to step into. I had a professor that said, I can compress and shrink this entire part of your education into just 2 words. You know what the 2 words were? Show up. Show up. And that's what I see again and again. I see it in this room. You all show up. This isn't easy. It isn't fun all the time, but it's balanced with all the joys that come along with what it is to learn and what it is to support all the people in our community and meeting them where they are. Show up, meet them where they are. Don't wait for them to come to you. And I think that's the very important piece that I've experienced myself with these wonderful folks at 287, and now you showed up. You're here today. You're here now, and you're present. And that's what you're bringing to others. And that's the most commendable thing. My dad was a school teacher. He was a 5th and 6th grade teacher in Mendota Heights in elementary school. He went to work with being a principal in Columbia Heights, an elementary school. Ended up working his way through to be like an assistant superintendent there. And I can always remember my dad being present at everything that was going on in the good times and in the tough times. And I'd be sitting in my classroom in 5th or 6th grade in those terrazzo tile floors in the little old Nelson Elementary School. My dad had metal cleats on his shoes. So every time he would walk the halls, being present, interacting with kids, with staff members, with teachers, with family members as they came in, I knew where my dad was, and he was present, because I hear the click, click, click down the hallway. Hey, Randy, here comes your dad. He's gonna fire Mrs. Peterson. Yeah! No, he never did. He never did fire Mrs. Peterson. But I guess that is what kind of drives me in the being present, in the showing up, And that's what you're going to need to be doing right now. Dump the cup out, the coffee's cold, out the window, let's go in for a refill. And you're going to have to do it again and again and again and again. You're going to need to do it again and again. But that's who you are. I know that's who you are. I don't know you, but I know who you are.
Thank
Good
you.
luck.
Anne.
Yes.
I don't want to, like, that was beautiful, and I don't want to, but I'm going to take this in a more technical direction, which is,
Please do.
the, obviously, the showing up part is super important.
Yep.
But the way we do our jobs as board members is largely through governance.
Yep.
So what would you want us as board members here in 287, but also the 9 districts that we represent, you have an audience of board members. What would you want us to know to better do our jobs in governance to support, I guess, the safety of our schools, the safety of our students maybe just in this example, but also maybe in other examples?
I think the main thing is to keep your finger on the pulse. Keep your finger on the pulse as far as having an open communication with, even if it's schools within your home district, in making sure that you're listening as to what is going on, what they are seeing, what they are hearing, what they're experiencing. Because especially right now, we're in a time of such crazy change and having to monitor and adjust. Just think what you all did going through COVID. How many of you had to make that quick shift to technology and to try to keep students and families engaged with what was going on? And beyond that, just be there in support of your teachers who are having to make this quantum shift and challenges of making this happen in some form or another. Things that we have not even dreamed of 3 years ago happened within the education system in the state. And it's kind of exposed things that we probably never really thought of or considered. It's like this. We're used to seeing the world like this. Every day's like this. Guess what happened? We've had to do this. That's weird. That is really weird, but we've had to really do some tremendous changes. And what I saw happen quite a bit is we hardly even got a chance to get back to educating. We're just trying to rebuild relationships. And it's not only between students and teachers and, the direct that they deal with, but it's even all of us, throughout the entire hierarchy or the system within schools. So we're having to rebuild and reconnect relationships that have been, basically severed or scuttled in many different ways. So I don't really have a good answer for you, but it's maintaining that communication and that piece as far as, understanding exactly what are the struggles that are happening right now, and be open to what they say, because there's many times I'm totally blindsided when I have the conversation and say, that's not at all what I expected. Not at all what I expected. There's many times that we will drive back to the office from doing a site visit or a training, and we'll look at each other in the car and say, whew, that was not at all what I thought was going on. But then making that shift, okay, well, and how do we support, how do we provide resources, and how do we help?
Sandy.
Just because you gave me an opening, I do want the board to know that this afternoon, midday today, Ben and I did an update to the superintendent advisory on the shooting and the tragedy and the aftermath too. So that just happened today, just so you're aware.
Other questions, especially board members who maybe haven't had a chance to ask yet, but if there is something on your mind. I guess the thing that I'm both thrilled and also not excited, or not surprised. I am excited that 150 staff came to that gathering. And I think that signals how important and how necessary that space was. And I think thinking about what does it look like to continue having opportunities like that is at the forefront of my mind. And then I think the other things that I just wanted to share are going to be on my mind as we continue to do this work together. You touched on what does it look like to bring students into the conversation and create space for them as well. I think that's something that I'll be really eager to hear more about. And then also how to bring our racial equity focus and the lens that we strive to use as a district into this work and have it really be reflected in the conversations and in the decisions that are ahead of us. I think those are things that I just personally am going to be really trying to hold tight onto. And just thank you for being here. I think that this is a really important step for us as a community, and then for you to be here with us as a board specifically this evening. We've talked in the long work that we are here to do, and in the showing up that we are going to continue to do for our students, for our staff, for our families, and for everybody who's doing this every single day. We only come together twice a month as a school board. And so I think Anne's question about what should we really be centered on is at the front of a lot of our minds. Sandy, is there anything else you'd like to share?
No, just also extend my gratitude to you coming this evening and also providing kind of that overview to so many different parts of our district, certainly the South Education Center site, but also to the governance part of this district, which is the school board, because at the end of the day, we really are in it together. And none of us have had any experience like this. I can certainly say that for myself, and I suspect it's true for everybody. So it is both a learning process. At the same time, as you mentioned, everyone is truly dealing with a lot of trauma from this. And that includes our leaders. I know we've mentioned our staff and maybe not been as explicit about our leaders, but that's an important part of this. And Tanya pointed that out very well to us earlier this week as she leads the mental health work in this. It's a situation where not only our staff are significantly impacted, but a number of our leaders are significantly impacted as well. So it's a challenging situation, and trying to step forward in it is going to take all of us working together. And I'm grateful to have you. I'm grateful to have Ben leading our internal efforts as well. He's very well suited to this kind of work, and that's already showing as evidenced by the committee he mentioned in the meeting plan for next week. So thank you very much for coming. I'm going to go out on a limb and say it won't be the last time.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you very much. This is very hard work, and we're just honored to be able to walk with you during this process. Thank you.
Thank you so much,
Thank you.
Randy.
Thank you.
And thanks to you too, Ben, for your contributions. We are going to continue moving in our agenda. There is not an instructional report this evening, but there are several items in our business services and labor relations report, starting off with the FY22 budget revision, which May, I believe you are going to take us through.
Yeah, good evening, Chair and board members. I am going to share my screen here so that you have the spreadsheet up in front of you. 1 second while I get that up here. So hopefully you can see that.
It's up, but it is very small. Is it really
let me
what
see
we
what
have
I
in
can-
our packet? Yeah,
All
is
right,
this
let's
the
see.
board book, May? It is. Okay.
It's also in your board packet, so I can see what I can do. So I've upped it to its kind of max here, but then you can only see a portion of it at a time. Is that any better or not?
Not really, but I think we can make sure that everybody has access to the digital copy in board book. So you can go ahead and we will make sure that people can see it at their seats.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
So I'm going to start out first by just going over the spreadsheet just a little bit about the layout of the spreadsheet. So the blue column that you see there is the beginning fund balances. And in the revised budget, that reflects the audited ending fund balance of the previous year, or the June 30th, 2021 fund balance. The columns that have a yellow heading, so a highlighted yellow header, are the original budget. So that is the budget that the board approved last June of 2021. And those columns are included for comparison purposes in the revised budget. And then the columns that are highlighted in orange contain the revised budget amounts that the board is acting on this evening. Down the left-hand column is listed each of the categories or areas of the budget. And these are split out over the varying fund balance designations. So starting at the top with the unassigned general fund balance, the first row that we have there is the district-wide admin and operations budget. And that revenue is going down from original budget due to lower projected enrollment, and expenses are slightly up. There are some transfers into this area. There is a transfer of $341,001 coming back into this area from the subsequent year budget assigned fund balance. Now, the subsequent year assigned fund balance is a GASB required fund balance that is set aside at the time of the audit to show that these resources have been allocated to offset the planned deficit spending in the following year's adopted budget. At the end, this admin and operations category will have $127,146 as a projected fund balance. On the next line down, you'll see something that says grants. As the amount of grants has substantially increased, what we have done now is we've separated grants out from each of these categories so that they have their own line. So these are district-wide grants, and you can see that they've increased slightly since the revised budget. The next line we have down there is the ALC Academic Fund. The revenues in this area are up due to growth that we're seeing in our NSO program. But at the same time, the revenues for our ALC programs went down $420,000 due to lowered enrollment. Expenditures increased by $764,000 due to increased enrollment in NSO programs and increases in salary due to the 2209 contract settlement. This category is projecting a deficit of $864,931, which is $527,058 more than was projected at the original budget. This budget, or revised budget, includes a request for a transfer from the special education category to cover this deficit. The next line down is our career and technical education programs. That is projecting a pretty much flat budget and ending with a fund balance similar to its starting fund balance. The next category is our special education fund. Due to lower than projected enrollments of approximately 60 ADM, the revised budget reflects both decreases in revenues and expenditures of $2.6 million. A transfer to the ALC academic category of $527,058 and to the strategic priorities assigned fund balance of $137,072 are being requested as part of the revised budget approval process. This brings the overall unassigned fund balance to 8% of total expenditures, which is within the school board's fund balance policy of a minimum of 6 to 8%. Note, and this I always do this reminder, that 1 month's cash flow equals 8.33%. The next section of fund balances that we have are assigned fund balances. These are fund balance areas that the board has assigned to meet future projected needs. I'm not going to go through every line. I'm just going to hit a few highlights. The first line is the property account, and that holds funds for projects that were not completed by June 30th, allowing flexibility for projects to be completed later due to construction delays. Our separation severance assigned fund balance holds funding to pay for future severance and separation payments. And then other categories of interest in this area are our COVID-19 additional expense. These are funds that the district chose to set aside to cover expenses not covered by grants related to COVID-19. The Strategic Priorities Fund balance is to cover expenses related to mental health partnerships and racial equity strategic priorities. And then the Tuition Adjustment Reserve, which is used when MDE tuition billing calculations vary from district projections or when the state prorates special education funding. I'm going to pause and see if there's any questions. Oh, I'm sorry. I'm still presenting this thing you can't even read.
I'm just looking around the room. I don't see any, it looks like Regina does
Well,
actually
I just
a
have
question.
one. Regarding COVID-19 additional expenses, I appreciate you pointing out and having reserved the funds for expenses that aren't covered by grants. Is there any possibility that some of those funds could be recouped by any future fund? Or I'm not aware of anything in the legislature. I have not heard of any potential fund, but are you aware of anything, or is it just?
Not at this
what it is?
time, no.
Thank you.
So this, this was a decision that we made at the end of the 1920 year, was to put $500,000 aside because we didn't know, right? We didn't know what the pandemic was going to hold. We didn't know what federal funding was or wasn't going to come. And we have had to dip into that, as you can see. Right, we're down to 350,000, but everywhere we can, we use other funding sources first.
Got it. Yeah, thank you. It was very wise to set aside the fund and just a reality of the world right now. So thank you.
Are there any other questions right now? Okay, I don't see any, May. You can keep going.
All right, I'll move on to the restricted fund balance areas. So these are legally separated fund balances by state statute. So the first one there is health and safety, and there's a planned spend down of that fund balance for both fire safety and accessibility projects. The next is our long-term facilities maintenance. Our 21-22 project was the parking lot at West Education Center, which has already been completed. And then we have various HVAC projects at several school sites. In addition, we are planning to spend some of the fund balance to start work on our 23 projects in June of 2022. The next category is our medical assistance. There is a planned spend down of fund balance. These funds are used to fund the Nexus program, itinerant equipment, and non-reimbursable special education expenses to reduce special education tuition billing rates. And then in our safe schools fund balance category, we are projecting a spend down of fund balance, and that was planned. And that is for the replacement of our radios at South Education Center, North Education Center, and West Education programs. And our compensatory programs are projecting a stable fund balance. Moving down into our non-major funds, the first line that you see there is food service. Embedded into this revised budget is a food service transfer for an admin operations of $484,263, which is down from the original budget by $10,398. The next line we have there is our debt service fund. This fund balance will continue to grow as funds are placed in escrow to pay back the North Education Center Quality School Construction Bond in 2029. Our next is our custodial funds, which mainly includes our Horst scholarship funds for county involved youth who go on to a post-secondary school. And then in our health and dental insurance, well, our dental insurance funds, we are actually going to spend down some of our fund balance. And in our health insurance fund, claims continue to be lower than our historic and lower than we projected. So we are going to see an increase in that fund balance. We are starting to see here, kind of in the last month or so, an increase in claims as the situation with the pandemic changes. Are there any questions before the board acts on the 22-23 revised budget with total revenues of $108,004,510 and total expenditures of $108,864,713 and the various transfers that were previously discussed?
Thank you, May. You just have a way with reading it. I just felt like I was like listening to a podcast. Very, very clear. Any final questions or comments? Ruthie, go ahead.
I just want to say thank you for whoever worked on getting those grants under the consent agenda. Very good work. I also noticed that most of them or all of them are ending at the end of June of this year. So from what I could see, and is this correct, the expenditures, whatever was covered under those grants are one-time type purchases? What will we be affected at all when those grants go away, or will they be renewed?
So the majority of those grants are small grants, and they will be one-time expenditures.
Okay, that's what I assume. I just wanted to make sure. Thank you for all of your work.
So seeing no other questions, we could entertain a motion to approve the FY 21-22 budget as presented.
So moved.
Second.
So we have a motion by Sam Sant and a second by Ruthie Dallas. Any final discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The chair votes aye and the motion passes. We move next to our human resources report, beginning with a resolution directing recommendations for reducing programs and positions. Michelle, it looks like you are ready to go.
Thank you, Board Chair Brocky and board members. Can you hear me okay?
We can.
Wonderful, thank you. Tonight, first, I bring forward a request of the board to adopt a resolution directing the superintendent and administration to consider the possible need for the discontinuance or curtailment of positions, programs, and/or services. Please note that this will be based on the budget assumptions that come through for 2022-2023, which May Hopkins, Executive Director of Business Services, will present at the March board meeting. These will take into consideration the member district planning information that the district has received. We will, as required by Minnesota law, provide notice of any changes to programs and services as communicated to us by our member districts to any impacted staff in March. So thank you for your time and consideration to adopt this resolution.
Thank you so much, Michelle Axel, our Director of Human Resources. Any comments or questions from board members or Sandy, of course? Okay, and unfortunately, this is a routine annual event for us and pretty much for, I think, all of the boards that we represent, is taking this step and giving our district leadership the opportunity to really look at the year ahead and thinking about what our programs are going to be, what our student needs are, and responding accordingly. So thank you so much for just leading us through this process, as painful as it is for everybody. So with that, is there a motion to approve the resolution? I'm sorry, I'm getting waived. Do we actually need to do a reading of the resolution, or can we move to waive the reading?
I was just making sure. Roll call.
Yes,
I
I
have-
was going to do that
yes.
too.
Thank you.
So we had a motion by Heidi Marty. We had a second coming from this direction.
My second, yeah.
Sarah Johansson. And because it is a resolution, we are going to pull the board, but first I just want to pause and make sure that there isn't any further discussion before we do that. Okay,
We
we're
need to amend our motion and second to move
to
to
waive the reading.
waive the reading of the resolution, and then second to waive the reading of the resolution.
I don't know, I can't tell.
Right. I think so. I mean, that's what
I
we.
think we would
don't-
usually waive the reading. I think
Yeah.
we could
Yeah.
waive the reading.
Yeah.
But so we could amend the motion if the,
Sure. I just think we don't usually actually specify it. That's just
Okay.
our general practice. Yeah.
Okay.
Again, different boards do it in different ways, which is tricky. But Heidi, are you comfortable with us including in your motion, revising it if you feel so moved to waive the reading?
Yes,
Sarah? Okay. So we have a motion, we have a second to waive the formal reading of the resolution. There was no further discussion. Regina is filling in as clerk this evening and is going to pull the board.
all right, thank you. Member Andreessen is absent. Crystal Brackey,
Aye.
Ann Casey,
Hi.
Ruthie Dallas,
Aye.
Sarah Johansson,
Hi.
Michelle Coons,
Aye.
Heidi Marty,
Aye.
Jackie Mosqueda Jones,
Aye.
Regina Neville, I vote aye. Member Pagan Umar is absent. Pam Sant.
Yes.
Thank you. Everyone has voted aye and the motion carries.
Wonderful, thank you. The resolution is approved, and we will move on to our next item in the Human Resources Report, with which Michelle is also going to present for us.
Thank you, Board Chair Brockie, and I'm going to wait a moment here. I've asked Juanine to coordinate the presentation on my behalf. Thank you, Juanine. So today or tonight, I bring to you our planning for the upcoming hiring season this spring. And the focus of this time together is on our licensed positions and our licensed openings. Next slide, please. As we prepare for the hiring outlook for the next school year, we focus. First, we recognize our students. They have some of the highest needs in the region. We recognize our students are impacted by the licensed teacher shortage, the special education licenses. We recognize our students deserve to be served by the highest quality, diverse educators. 287 students are over 50% BIPOC. Human resources, our hiring supervisors, and all of our internal and external partners are committed to designing the recruitment and hiring which will address these challenges. Next slide, please. So again, we focus on attracting, hiring, retaining highly qualified, dedicated, licensed teachers who believe in our students' success. Students are their purpose. That will create opportunities for each student and are open and committed to raising the racial consciousness and understanding the prevalence of systematic racism in the educational system. Successful hiring relies on creativity, partnerships, and effective recruitment and retention methods. Next slide, please. So tonight, the outcomes by the end of this presentation, the board will know the current 287 picture of our high demand licensed positions. You will have learned about some of our spring recruitment methods, and you will be asked to approve the continuation of the signing and retention bonus. Next slide, please. So as we prepare for next school year, we review our current status as of today. And first, we look at, we have hired this year currently 40 tier 1 and tier 2 instructional staff, specific to the license of ASD and EBD. And so just to bring familiarity to the board, tier 1 and tier 2 licenses allows an individual to teach in subject content areas for which they are not fully licensed. And we are required by law to post and advertise all open licensed positions with the goal of hiring candidates with a tier 3 or tier 4 appropriate license. I added a little chart to the side. I want to thank Rachel out there. She helped me with the visuals, and currently of our 40 tier 1 and tier 2 educators, 35% of them are BIPOC. Before I move forward, I want to let you all know that tier 1 licenses may be renewed, and yet before we can consider the renewal of a tier 1 educator, the position must be, the open position at this time must be posted for a minimum of 60 days. Next slide, please. So as we continue to look at our current picture, there are other factors that are impacting our staffing. Retirements or departures from 287 create open positions. And I wanted to share with you, we have 8 licensed staff retirements that are upcoming for next year, who a combination of these 8 hold licensures in the deaf or hard of hearing, our ASD, and our EBD. All hard to find and hard to fill positions. Factors that also impact our staffing is our projected enrollment from our member districts. And once we receive that projected enrollment, it begins the process of staffing for next year. And we are just in those beginning stages. Next slide, please. So with the focus of attracting fully licensed candidates, we start our spring recruitment methods. And I'm going to share a snapshot of some of these we have begun starting to look at. Job fairs. We're working with Educate Minnesota. They're going to hold up to 4 different virtual job fair events. This will give educators many opportunities to meet with school employers, us. It also will be targeting, each event will be targeting different positions, and one of the events is for student teachers too. We're going to be joining the Minnesota Education Job Fair, the most known one. It's going to be in person and held again in April. And I'm excited to say that we are in the early stages of planning for our 3rd 287 job fair. We held our initial in 2017, and we held another one in our 287 job fair in 2019. It's proven success. It's provided opportunity for the interested candidates to get to know 287 and to get to know the candidates in a more personal environment. Next slide, please. In continuing with our spring recruitment methods, we've have our various outreach efforts. 287 staff are our greatest resource to help recruit. So we're going to continue our employee referral. This allows for a $500 referral bonus to be spent in a classroom or program of their choice to any employee that refers an applicant who ultimately becomes hired. And I have a little snippet over there. We've averaged 6 per year over the last 6 years, and that's specific to the licensed open positions that we've had. We also going to continue our campaigns around our social media and recruitment platforms such as Facebook, LinkedIn, Indeed, and HR is working in collaboration with the communications team to put together robust media ads that will be placed in various different media placements. And I'm excited to share this new partnership, which Rachel just shared with me the other day. It's an opportunity for a weekly placement in a publication specific for special education teachers. An ad spot within this media platform is open, and we were able to, as Rachel said, land it. And the exciting part is equity work is one of their top 3 core values. Way to go, communications.
Wonderful.
Next screen, please. Or next slide, sorry, screen. And finally, I'm bringing forward another recruitment that has been very successful for us. Beginning during the 2016 recruitment year, it's been over 6 years. We've hired over 91 employees, and we've held a 73% retention rate. And across the board, of our BIPOC staff that we've hired, 90% of them are still with us. It is a $3,000 for licensed new hires in our identified high need, hard to fill open positions for teachers and in the high demand support areas. We've had agreed success. Local 2209 and the district have signed an MOU, and that shows our commitment and understanding of how important it is that we feel having the signing bonus in place. So before I'm going to close tonight, I will be recommending the board to approve the continuation of the signing and retention bonus for the 2022-2023 school year. And I'm at my last slide. And I believe it just says, any questions?
Thanks, Michelle. Are there any questions about the presentation or about the action that we are being asked to take this evening to continue the signing and retention bonus for the 2022-2023 school year? I don't see, yes.
I'm just glad to see that this continues to be a success, and it seems to really be an important way that we can serve our students.
I'm glad you mentioned that. I wanted to share also, we've hired 11 this school year. So it is proving a success each year. Thank you.
Sam.
A question. Have these efforts gotten easier being in Minnesota with, like, because, for example, you said the 11 new hires, have they all been within Minnesota, or do you need to expand, outside of the state too for recruitment efforts?
I know that we have extended outside of the state of Minnesota. It's a great question, Sam, and I'm going to ask that I review and see if I can identify if in any of the recruitment through the signing bonus came from licensed staff outside of the state. I don't have that information with me offhand.
Thank you. Seeing no other questions, we could entertain a motion to approve continuation of the signing and retention bonus for the upcoming school year as presented.
So move.
I'm going to give the motion to Michelle Coons, who was the second over here, Jackie Mosqueda Jones. Any final discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The chair votes aye, and the motion is approved. We move now into the board business section of our agenda, and first up is policy review and revision, and doing a follow-up of a series of policies involving COVID-19. And so Anne, our general counsel, is going to present that. Hello, Anne.
Good evening, everyone. I presented the policies and their changes in some detail during the first read, and I'm happy to do that again or just take questions according to the board's preference.
Can I get a thumbs up if people would like a general overview? I'm not seeing any thumbs up, so I think we can just move to see if there are any specific questions or comments on people's minds for Anne before we take potential action. You are recommending action this evening, that's correct?
That is correct.
Great. Just giving people a moment to read.
So Crystal, can I just confirm, since this is the second reading and we did get a lot of background on the first reading, and I don't see any red lines in the second reading, so this is the exact document that we saw during the first reading, right?
That is correct.
One more logistical question. In our board packet, it looks as though we could potentially move these two together. Is that correct, Anne? It could be one motion, or would you like us to take the two policies separately?
No, I think one motion would be fine.
Okay, as long as we specify that. Great. Just continuing to, people are looking at their laptop, so I want to make sure that people have the time that they need to review this. Okay, looks like most people are looking back up, which I will take as a signal. Is there a motion to approve HM 2020 and HM 2040 policies as presented?
I so move.
We have a motion by Sarah Johansson and a second by Sam Sant. Any final discussion?
So you did say 2020 and 2040.
Correct.
It's 220 and 240 in what I'm seeing.
I'm sorry, what did I say?
2020 and 2040.
Oh, thank you.
Just wanted to.
I apologize. Yes,
Mhm.
the motion should reflect it's HM 220
Mhm.
and HM 240. Thank you, Heidi.
Mhm.
Any final discussion other than that very important note? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The chair votes aye and the motion passes. Thank you, Anne. Moving ahead, the next item on the agenda is AMSD report. There was a meeting at the beginning of February. I know the state demographer was the presenter. I was unable to attend. Is there anybody who was able to attend? And if so, would you like to make any comments about the presentation or anything else that was covered at that meeting?
who was there, but I can't, I think the slides are on the website always. She's always really interesting. So there were some interesting takeaways. So, and I think they're all in her slides. I wouldn't want to quote anything.
Sounds good. If that sounds of interest to you, check out the AMSD website. That's a good headline. In the district news section, the calendars and local 2209 get on the bus schedules are in your packets as usual. The one thing that I just wanted to call out is please let Juanine know if you plan to attend either of the two upcoming events. April 12th is Get on the Bus or I'm not sure exactly how the travel or presentation will work, but I know the programs are in the board packet as the West Education Center and Itinerant Services, I believe.
Yeah, I think I just clarified and looked at Elizabeth. It's at HTC for the West Education. Right.
Oh, Itinerant Center is still listed in the schedule, so that's okay. So sounds good. April 12th, get on the bus
West and Hennepin Tech. Is that accurate?
at Hennepin Tech.
West, okay.
Yep.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. You know, I appreciate that clarification because I had written and I thought, well, I don't know how we're doing that, but we'll do that. And but thank you.
Okay. And the most important thing is let Juanine know, and then
Yes.
we will make sure that everybody has all of the accurate logistics that they need. And then the next scheduled breakfast with members of our local 2209 is April 26th. And so please also let Juanine know if you are able and interested to attend that. So with that, we arrive at once around the table, which is time for updates and announcements from board members that they would like to share with each other. Sam.
Thank you, Crystal. As I spoke with Crystal earlier today, that I wanted to discuss with the rest of this board, not as far as action as 287, but as us as member districts that are a part of 287 individually for action. I'm sure you heard last week what happened with our Cooper girls basketball team in New Prague. They were succumbed to racial attacks, monkey noises. It was absolutely horrible from students as well as from parents and families in the stands last Tuesday
Where was it? Sorry.
in New Prague High School.
Oh, my God.
And we weren't the only school that experienced this. St. Louis Park did, and a private school did as well. And our superintendent has confirmed that we have condemned any other activities with that district process the rest of the year because we're changing conferences apparently. But I'm here asking the rest of our member districts to please do the same and to be a part of this movement because they've done it to 3 other districts, schools. They're going to do it to more, and it's horrible. They're learning this type of behavior from home. It's going straight up into the administration. We've not heard an apology from their superintendent. He has been on vacation. We're just hearing a lot of passing the buck throughout that district. So we're asking for you guys to go back to your member districts to discuss this and to join us in solidarity to boycott New Prague High School or New Prague School District from any athletic events.
I would like to jump on that a little bit. Sorry. Our schools, 279 does not play New Prague, but it's happened to our girls from other schools that we're finding out happen around the same time. And so our board chair and our superintendent and myself have been meeting with people to try to get a more group thing. So if everybody can talk to their districts on figuring that out. I know Corey McIntyre, who's our superintendent, is on the Minnesota High School League leadership team. And so he's bringing it to that group. And then Kelsey Dawson Walton is planning on bringing it to AMSD. And so I'm hoping that we can all make a unified statement that it's uncalled for and inappropriate. And I thought both of your district statements were spot on and beautiful. And So I was working on ours, so.
I believe the State High School League made a statement today as well, released it.
Today, yeah,
Yeah.
okay.
And several of the other organizations, MSBA, AMSD, came out with the staff.
And
Yeah, I met, yeah.
And what the superintendents,
Yes.
what AMSA, whatever it is.
Thanks. I was teaching all day in conferences, so we met this morning about that. I knew they were meeting today, so.
There are a lot of different acronymed organizations that signed on to that. And I will just say, this is my personal opinion. I appreciate that for the intentions and the aspirations, and I don't think it's addressing the immediate harm and immediate action that I think is part of what Sam and others are saying we also need to do at the same time. So I'm all for collective action on a lot of different fronts on this.
Yeah, and that was part of our big discussion this morning was, what's the accountability going to be? And is it, I don't want to use the word uniform because that's anti-equity, but is it appropriate and predictable across the state when things like this happen? Let's hope they don't anymore. Stop it now.
Are there additional things that people like to share related to this or other?
I would like to ask, I don't know what the procedure is on this particular board, to come up with a gender inclusion policy. Your equity policy is amazing, and I'm kind of surprised that we don't have a gender inclusion policy. So I would like to formally request, and I don't know what the procedure is to get that on any kind of going.
I think we will take that as one and go from there.
Absolutely.
Okay. Thank you.
I wanted, oh, please go
I
ahead.
would just say, back to Sam's comments, that we will work between now and the next board meeting to talk about a resolution of support. We don't participate in Minnesota High School League, but I could foresee a resolution of support that could come to the board on this topic. Okay.
And I was just going to share a personal update, which is that I am going to be absent for the next 2 board meetings, which I know is less than ideal as the board chair, but it is due to a planned sabbatical that I'm going to be on from work for 6 weeks. And so as part of that, I'm going to be away for 4 weeks, and that includes 2 board meetings. And so I want to share appreciation to Shannon, who's not here, and to Regina, who agreed a good while back to step in my absence as chair. I will certainly be available for most of the time that I'm away via email and or phone. If you need to reach me, please don't hesitate to do so, but I will be missing 2 meetings. And so just wanted people to know that in advance. Okay. With that, we have reached the end of our agenda and could entertain a motion to adjourn.